Talk some recruiting. Sam Spiegleman is a national recruiting analyst, and I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce where he's from because at this point, I just don't want to get it wrong, and I know that we had a merger this week. So, Sam, who do you work for at this point? Let's talk about that, and then we'll go into some players.
I am still the national recruiting analyst at Rivals. So that is all the same. The last three places I've worked have been Rivals on 3 and Rivals, and now they're just all one big umbrella. So I think that no matter what you say, you really can't go wrong at this point.
Rivals and on 3 merged. Sam does an awesome job covering the entire sport for that outlet. So let's talk some recruiting. Yesterday, a couple of announcements that LSU was involved in. Start with the one that they got, Trenton Henderson, and what that recruitment looked like and what kind of prospect LSU's looking at.
Yeah, you have to give credit to this entire LSU staff. They came from behind in that recruitment. Obviously, Pensacola, proximity-wise, not too far from Baton Rouge, but naturally schools like Florida and Miami were very much in play with Trenton Henderson. Auburn was a leader at parts of the spring, and the Longhorns were the team that really started to surge as a July commitment was approaching, but LSU was able to kind of knock it out of the park on that official visit. An edge defender like Trenton Henderson is exactly what LSU was coveting in this class. They had missed on a couple of those targets already. So beating out rivals like Florida, like Auburn, and like Texas, getting Trenton on board, that's a huge piece towards what's shaping up to be a big summer for BK and the Tigers. And J.J. Bush, another guy that they would have loved in the secondary. You know, a late surge from Arkansas, but more today than ever. We're seeing those late surges and those teams win down the stretch. So, you know, they were playing from behind with Trenton and came out on top. They were leading the way with JJ for a good chunk of time and then missed. So we'll see how that one plays out moving forward.
Yeah, it's just I've watched LSU recruiting for a long time. I don't recall a lot of folks going to Arkansas when LSU's really in the mix. What can you tell us kind of about how that unfolds?
Yeah, you know, LSU and really Blake Baker was the driving force of why the Tigers were basically either at or very much near the top with JJ for a good chunk of his recruitment. Once LSU offered and got him back on campus for a workout and then for his official visit, it seemed like this was a match made. Baylor was in the mix for a while. Mississippi State was in the mix for a while. But Arkansas was a team that during these official visits, you know, we heard some hey, that he might be leaning LSU, but keep an eye out for the Razorbacks. I don't need to tell you, Hunt. You know, that's where Walmart is. They know what Sam Pittman has the funds to go out and get talented players. Listen, J.J. Bush is a very talented linebacker prospect. He certainly will be playing somewhere in the SEC. This is just a win for the Razorbacks, you know, surging late for a talented kid from the Mobile area.
This is maybe too far deep into the weeds to answer, but I want to toss it out there. With the revenue sharing that's now part of the college football fabric, like, does that change the tenor of a recruiting conversation as opposed to just the wild, wild west of NIL?
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, the NIL era has been way more unpredictable than we've ever seen. We've seen more of these like late shakeups and twists and turns and you know, kids love the graphics. They love to keep, you know, their finalists and the contenders out in the public, even if they're keeping, you know, their leader or their top 2 or 3 private. So nowadays, with the revenue sharing, with the NIL factors, we're seeing kids commit to schools that we didn't see in their top 4 or top 5 when they said they were going to make a July 3rd or July 4th announcement. That just goes to show you that if some schools miss on a target, they got more to spend on another target at the same position. So, you know, we're used to saying, hey, LSU's board looks like player A, player B, and player C. But because of this new era that we are in, if they miss on target A or target B, I don't think they're going to miss on target C because they got the funds to go get them. And it's just a different model that we're accustomed to. But certainly playing itself out in real time right now with this 2026 class.
And I'm not even talking about J.J. Bush here. I'm not talking about Trenton Henderson. I'm talking big picture in this way. Is this playing out more so like free agency where teams have allotted funds and they basically reach their limit for that player in that position based on that skill set? And if someone goes above that and they just kind of move on, you're seeing teams kind of bow out for recruitments if it gets a little too rich for their blood?
100%.
Yeah.
I've had some schools in the last couple of days be like, "Hey, that we think this kid is one of the best players in the country, but we can't match that number that this program threw at them." It's a completely different mindset, but they, at the same time, when you're thinking about it from a front office perspective, high school recruits of 4 and 5 star kids, some are ready to step in and play day one. Some are a little bit more developmental. That's not a knock on it. It's just the nature of the beast with high school recruits. So if someone is commanding a super high price tag from the high school ranks, an NFL front, a college front office has to make the decision whether we want to invest in this kid as a high school prospect, or are we going to go maybe into Louisville and steal their left tackle because we can now pay him a market value and we can bring him to the SEC. And I think there'll be a couple of college scouts when LSU plays Bama or plays A&M in a couple of months. So these are real-time decisions that front offices are making, not just GMs, not just, director of player personnel. These are full front office decisions at this point.
Sam Spiegleman is our guest, natural recruiting director for Rivals and On3. All right, I can't let you get out of here without talking about Lamar Brown. I know that it's a dead period for in-person contact. I'm assuming A&M and LSU are going to be blowing him up over the next week. What do you think the next week looks like, and do you feel like we'll reach our conclusion here on the 10th?
Yeah, that is the question, right? If you're an LSU fan, listen, it sounds super cliche, it sounds super boring and stirred up, but I have heard from before his official visit to LSU until earlier this morning that this is as close to a 50-50 coin flip as it gets. I can say this, A&M has been the team that LSU fans have been worried about and should be worried about. He has logged, I believe, 10 visits over the last 13 months. And A&M is the first team that opened the book to Lamar that, hey, maybe you should try defensive line. And they put him right at the top of their board and have been coming at him on and off the field with that in mind. I can say that the LSU official visit, when he quote unquote canceled it and then took it, I think that was a little bit more of a misunderstanding than most people realize. This is a kid who lives on the foot of their campus and thought that he could take his official visit at any other point in the calendar year. And who could blame a 16-year-old for thinking that? But that visit really, I think, locked LSU into being the other choice between A&M and LSU. LSU has been riding a little bit of momentum since that official visit. I've not heard that they are overly confident. They are very aware of A&M and vice versa. I could see him commit to either one of these schools on July 10th. If it is A&M, which it very well could be, it would not surprise me, like I said, from an NIL perspective, from a defensive line coach perspective, from a relationships perspective, you might have to give the Aggies the edge. But the hometown factor is a very real factor for someone like Lamar. He's a very emotional young man. He is someone who, when his first offer from LSU came, once upon a time, they had been sitting at the top of his wish list ever since. The Aggies really gave him plenty to think about and are still giving him plenty to think about. So if it is A&M on the 10th, it will not be over. LSU will not just throw their swords down and give up. This is going to become a flip watch until December. If it is LSU, I don't expect it. It will be over. It will be done. But this has a lot of moving pieces to it. These two programs have battled over some of the best players in the state over the past couple of years, and this battle over Lamar is shaping up to be the closest and maybe the most for LSU fans to sweat over going into the 10th.
Forgive my ignorance on this question, but is he purely a defensive line prospect, or do you think there's an opportunity that he could play offensive line, or, as has been hinted, like maybe both?
I'll say this. I've always thought that Lamar should be an offensive lineman, from position value and his athletic traits and skill set is off the charts. But after getting more research, seeing what he looks like as a defensive lineman, seeing his body shape and form and the work that he's done in the off season, he's actually just an absolute unicorn. I think that he could play defensive line at one of the highest levels in the country. Obviously, A&M agrees that he is the number one defensive lineman in the country right now, given his athleticism. But I know that schools like LSU and others think that not only can he play defensive line, but he would be a potential day one starter on the offensive line as an interior offensive lineman. They also get paid right now in the NFL, so I don't think that's a most terrible route. And if you're LSU, you know that you've recruited him at both positions. You can either develop along the defensive line or compete for playing time on the offensive line right away. I think that plays to the fact that if he's not sure about his position versatility, he has the options in Baton Rouge, where that might not be the case as much in College Station. But in terms of the skill set, I don't know. I can't remember a player of Lamar's caliber that could do either position at such a high level, and that schools around the country almost unanimously agree with the fact that this guy is a dude on defense or offense, which is just unheard of.
He's Sam Spiegleman, Rivals and On 3. We appreciate the time. Have a great holiday weekend, and we'll check in throughout the summer.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Hunt.
That is Sam Spiegleman. One thing that's interesting is when you talk about managing the money, what your professional organization has to spend, and when they miss out on a free agent, like what that free agent signed for. So it's very easy to analyze. Like I can analyze, like, why didn't the Cubs get Juan Soto? Why did the Cubs get Dansby Swanson and not Trey Turner? Like, because I know what the terms are. With these recruiting battles, you don't know who's offering what. So you can't really analyze, like, what the evaluation is or why a player picked X or Y. It's just, you just find the result. It's a results-oriented game. And so in that way, it's a little bit interesting because you just can't know what Arkansas offered J.J. Bush, what LSU valued J.J. Bush at, what they offered, and why J.J. Bush picked Arkansas over LSU. That would be an interesting thing to go over, but we don't get the information. We just say, oh, he picked Arkansas. And, it's an interesting world that we live in, that in the professional ranks, we get all the details. In the college ranks, we just get none. And you just see the outcome and you talk about what it is, and you just got to manage the roster and move forward. So it's easy for an LSU fan to go, Arkansas just paid him more, and LSU didn't really value him that high, and that's why they missed out. Maybe the offers were comparable. Like, who knows? We don't know. But thanks to Sam for checking in. We're going to be certainly on Lamar Brown watch all week long next week after this 4th of July holiday. So check him out and all his stuff on Rivals and, of course, on 3 as well. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button. Leave your comments below and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.